Hi, I'm Femi Okay.
I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream.
Today is 3 stories in one show. Algeria's political future, what lies ahead, plus a look at Chad's social media ban and an online free speech case in Uganda.
You can join today's conversation. We're reading your live comments and questions on YouTube and Twitter at AJ Stream.
My name is Yasmina Alouche. I'm a researcher at TR2 World Research Centre, and you are in the stream.
After 6 weeks of protests calling for political reform and an end to the Algerian president's 20 years in power, Abdelaziz Bouteflika agreed to step down on Tuesday, according to state media. But it doesn't appear to be the end for the popular movement for reform. Here to talk to us about Algeria's next steps in Beirut, Dalia Ghanem, a resident scholar at the Carnegie Middle East Center, and in Fez, Morocco, Malia Bouatia, an activist. Really good to have you here, ladies. I'm just thinking, in the last few weeks on social media, the pictures of the protests have been so compelling. But now that the president for Algeria has stepped down, what do you see, Malika?
There was a lot of enthusiasm online, and it's represented in this tweet. This is Fadwa who writes in, "Yes, we can, and yes, we just did it. The president, Bouteflika, has resigned. Indeed, we are happy for this because it's an achievement, but we should not forget that this is just one of so many demands we are seeking to achieve, and will, God willing, inshallah, we will keep it peaceful." So you can see the enthusiasm there, but also the hope for what is to come next. Malia, you were just there on Friday, and I know you have plans to return again on this coming Friday. What are your friends and family who are there and were there yesterday? What are they telling you about the mood on the street right now?
They are both celebrating but also awaiting the next bout of mass demonstrations. They're organizing harder. And they're hoping for bigger protests, a larger turnout, because they understand that they may have removed the face of the regime, but the system itself is still very much intact, and they are seeking to dismantle it in its entirety and to build from here, and effectively to develop the future leadership of the nation.
Dalia, as we were showing that celebratory video from the streets of Algeria, different places, you were smiling so broadly. Is this mission accomplished? Are we done? Do you take a moment to enjoy what you were protesting about?
Well, you know, as you may know, I participated in the demonstration on March 22nd and March 29, and I observed it as the political analyst that I am, but also I observed it with my heart as an Algerian citizen. And I can't not say that I am very happy and very proud of what the Algerian people have achieved without any drop of blood being shed. And I think Algerian gave a beautiful lesson of peace and how a peaceful movement can achieve goals. However, you know, I am not skeptical, but maybe I am realistic. You know, there is still things to be done, and Algerians, their demand are still, you know, they still have a lot of demand. It is true that the men left, but the Algerian system is not a one-man show. Behind the man, there is a complex and opaque regime, and Algerians are today asking for Bouteflika's clan to depart, but also for the old guard to depart, and including Army Chief of Staff Gaid Saleh. As a matter of fact, on Friday 29th, they were singing روح روح بوتفليقة ودي معاك قايد صالح, which means go Bouteflika and take with you قايد صالح.
You know, Dalia, you said that this is not a one-man show, and that was just a good way to sum up what people online are saying, because they're saying it is so much bigger, of course, than just Bouteflika. Sidi says, I expect the protest to grow bigger. Bouteflika's resignation is just the first step in shaping the contours of Algeria's political future. This should not be about the president alone. It should be about overhauling an entire political structure anchored on elitism. Now, Sidi here on Twitter got a response from another member of our community. Tuxkey writes and says, because the first thought that came to me was it's about time, but you are 100% correct. The entire political structure needs overhauling. I hope they can do it, but it's hard. Malia, how would protesters and opposition members even go about that?
The answer is not a clear one. There isn't simply one to give, and I think that the Algerian protesters are very clear about that, and they're in it for the long haul. Speaking to demonstrators, they said, we'll continue marching for a year, to however long it's going to take for our country to be rejuvenated, for a complete transformation of our society, a complete redistribution of wealth, and a complete realignment with the ideas that our liberation struggle had put at the fore of our national struggle and identity. And I think that with those aspirations in mind, they are not looking for quick solutions or band-aids. They are looking for long-term revolutionary work.
So earlier today, April the 3rd, on the streets of Algiers, people were still protesting. Have a look.
Get out with all your power, Gaid Salah. We are here to say to you and your clique, get out.
We are gathered here against Gaid Salah, the army's chief of staff, who is part of the system, part of the current regime.
Dalia, I know you've written about this, an opinion piece in the New York Times, Opinion, Another Battle of Algiers. And you're talking here about the entire political system, the military's involvement in it. So if people are still protesting, what do they want now? They already removed their president. Now what?
Well, the people are sick of this regime that has been hijacking the country, if I may say, and the political system and the economic wealth for the last 20 years, not to say, as a matter of fact, since the independence of the country in 1962. People are fed up with also this old leadership. We are talking about a country in which more than 55% of the population is under age 25. So people, Algerian, want leadership that is young and that can actually represent them. As one protester said it once, he said it in French, "Je veux un président qui tweete," meaning I want a president who is able to tweet. So behind, the joke, there is a generation that is really capable of understanding what is at stake. And we've seen it, Algerians showed a great degree of political maturity. They stood up for their rights. They did it in a very peaceful way. As they said, the protests stayed silmiya, which means peaceful, and also hadariya, which means civic. And I think what they want today is to remove this old guard. But also, while it is true that Algerians have been asking for the military to engage and to remove Bouteflika, they are also aware of an Egyptian scenario, if I may say. They don't want to have another, Sisi, if I may say, in Algeria. So this is why they've been asking Gaid Saleh to move. And as a matter of fact, I think that if Gaid Saleh, the army chief of staff, moves and resign, it will be very good for him, and it would have, he would be remembered as this great general who made a historical move. But I think it is also time for him to resign.
Dalia, if the president was on Twitter, he would see things like this. This is Chris, who writes, "Nothing is new under the sun. The military will take over and bring back some rogues belonging to the old man's political party. Things will get worse in Algeria unless democratic forces are really vigilant." So that raises a few questions that another person in our community, a former guest, and a woman you heard just at the top of today's show, Yasmina Alouche, here's some questions she raised.
What we're seeing now is a transition headed now by potentially Abdelaziz bin Salah, the head of the National People's Council, and then a 90-day window in which we will see elections. Now, there are a lot of questions surrounding that, specifically the role of the military after Gaid Salah's anti-Bouteflika move, and also what type of transition are we going to see? Are they going to be reflective of the democratic aspirations of the people, or then are they going to be then reflective of a process that so many Algerians have very little appetite to see, another long process which doesn't really lead to many reforms?
So she raised very valid questions there. And Ninja here on YouTube watching live picks that up, saying, what's the likelihood of the military allowing a genuinely democratic system to take hold in Algeria? Malia, I'll give that one to you.
Well, the Algerian protesters, in their many rounds now have demonstrated they're not willing to wait for them to deliver it or to create this transition, if you will. They will shape what comes next, and they will decide it, and they will make their opposition to whatever is proposed very, very clear. And I think that it's important to bear that in mind, that the Algerian people are not waiting for the remnants of the regime to provide them with what they think is a suitable leadership. They will decide on it, and they will deliver it on the streets.
Malia and Dalia, we're just about to wrap up here, but Malia, I'm just looking at a picture of you protesting. This is a couple of weeks ago. Are you still going to go out and protest? Do you have more protesting in you?
I have much more protesting in me, and I will be there alongside the Algerian people, especially as a member of the Algerian diaspora. It is incredibly powerful and moving to be amongst my people, marching, demonstrating, and demanding freedom.
Dalia, are you going to be out on the streets again? Are you done?
Yes,
Okay.
I just came back from Algiers 2 days ago, and I am planning again to come back. So definitely, yes.
You will be joined by Fadwa, who tweets in, the protests will continue on Friday, April 5th, peacefully. We want them out. Dalia and Malia, thanks so much for joining us. And now to Chad, where it's been more than a year since the Chadian government blocked social media access to its citizens. Use of services like WhatsApp, Facebook, and Twitter was cut off amid economic and political anxieties in the country. Listen to what Chadian activist Kemba Dida Alain had to say about the ban's impact.
Les réseaux sociaux sont devenus à nos jours un outil indispensable où les jeunes notamment l'utilisent pour s'informer, se former, également donner leur avis sur la gestion du pays. Et il se trouve que le régime actuel voit en ces outils une menace pour sa longévité au pouvoir, et c'est pourquoi celui-ci l'a censuré. Et le plus grave encore est que les jeunes aujourd'hui, tchadiens, ne peuvent pas sortir dans la rue parce que ces manifestations également dans la rue sont censurées de manière automatique, où le gouvernement empêche aux jeunes d'exprimer leur colère vis-à-vis de sa gestion. Donc nous vivons dans une situation vraiment inadmissible.
Well, here to tell us more about this story from Accra, Felicia Antonio of the African Freedom of Expression Exchange. That's a network of freedom of expression and media rights advocacy organizations in Africa. Welcome to the stream, Felicia. I wanted to start here with the author of this piece on African arguments. Chad's social media ban reaches 1 year mark, and that was published just a few days ago. That is from Samuel Woodhams, who writes, the social media blackout in Chad began on the 28th of March, 2018, following protests that broke out after constitutional recommendations were made that would allow the president to rule until 2033. The recommendations have since passed into law, and given the timing, it's reasonable to assume that this blackout was enforced in an attempt to prevent protests from spreading. So he explains there the reason behind this, but Felicia, what can you tell us about why it has lasted so long?
Okay, thank you very much, Malika. I would like to say that this is not the first time governments have resorted to the use of internet shutdowns or social media blackouts in order to quell protests. Like the writer rightly said, the government of Chad resorted to the use of social media blackouts in order to repress protests or ongoing protests during the moment. During the period. For instance, on March 28, there was a protest, even though the government has banned protests since 2014. And this is a trend that is going on the African continent. For instance, governments like Uganda, Cameroon, Sudan, Congo, Brazzaville, as well as the DRC, to mention but a few, have resorted to the use of such repressive measures during protests or important national events like
Felicia, let me just illustrate that point. There's an organisation called CEPESA, and they're called the Collaboration on the International ICT Policy for East and Southern Africa, and they actually illustrated the cost, the impact of what happens when you shut down your internet. Have a look here on my laptop. As you were mentioning, there were other countries who've also put a stop on the internet, maybe banned it for a little bit of time. Look at how much money these countries are losing. Let's just focus here on Chad. Over $3 million over that amount. Tell us about other impacts that are happening to people. When you shut down the internet in Chad for a year, what's the impact?
Yes, like you said, I always say that resorting to the use of internet shutdowns is like shooting yourself in the foot, and that is the government. So aside the economic implications of internet shutdowns, we have the political implications, which means that most of the governments tend to believe that when they use internet shutdowns or network disruptions, they are able to call protest. But this has proven wrong because protests keep, for instance, in Sudan a few months ago, the government resorted to the use of protests, to the use of internet shutdown, but we still have citizens on the streets protesting for the rights that they want to, or the change that they want to see in the country. And
Felicia,
so,
let's focus on Chad here, because I'm just really curious about how does your life change with no internet for a year? Give us an example.
Yes. For instance, we all know that the internet has become very critical in our daily lives. And so citizens in Chad, for instance, it means that living with living 1 year without access to social media platforms means that you cannot communicate freely with your families and friends. The internet has has extended our communication beyond our boundaries, and so a year without internet access means that you cannot easily communicate, you cannot easily network, as well as update yourself with the happenings around you. And also, to come to issues of freedom of expression, obviously this social media blackout is affecting the work of journalists, especially journalists that use social media platforms to disseminate their information. They are going to lose a lot because they cannot reach the audience that they used to reach a year ago. And so internet shutdowns or network disruptions are a violation, a flagrant violation of the fundamental freedom of expression rights and access to information rights of citizens.
Abdel Karim here on Twitter would agree. He says everyday life of Chadians has been deeply impacted. Social media has created a deep connection between people of rural areas, urban and diaspora, and the shutdown has disconnected them. The flow of information has stopped. And Femi, I'll read one more from Samuel, who illustrates that point even further. He says the blackout has infringed on citizens' freedom of expression and right to information. With increasing international pressure and mounting local activism, there are hopes that Debe will be forced to restore access.
Appreciate you being on the stream today. Thank you so much, Felicia. Next, a story out of Uganda, where academic and fierce government critic Stella Nyanzi is being tried for offensive communication and cyber harassment. Now, this isn't her first run-in with authorities. Listen to her address the court in a similar case in 2017.
This regime has offended this country. I am happy to take on the mantle of insanity. I am happy to take on the mantle of the truth teller. If this mantle is going to be the only time that the regime will be told about its offense to the people of Uganda. And therefore, yes, I have written a lot, Your Honor, about those who rule us, about family rule, about nepotism, issues that would be offensive to those who are the offenders of this nation. However, Your Honor, I am not guilty of offensive communication.
Nyanzi has been detained since November after posting a poem on Facebook about Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni. Her latest trial began last week, and with us to talk about the case, Rosabelle Keiko, a Ugandan journalist and the editor of African Feminism. If you didn't know Stella Nyanzi when you saw that clip, Rosabelle, you would want to know a whole lot more. For our international audience, what more can you tell us about her and why she's in so much trouble?
Thank you. Stella is a very witty person, and she knows the power of the pen and the power of using words that step out of the social norm, not only to disrupt those in power, but also to upset social norms. That's how she gained all this following from Facebook, building on her research and using and deploying vulgarity to challenge power. So she is one of the most powerful people to communicate, to bring back vulgarity, which is very much in Uganda's history, where Ugandans deployed radical rudeness against the British colonizers. So she's bringing back that history, and people don't know what to do with her. For many people, she has the power to arrest you and tell you that which you would not want to hear in the ways you wouldn't want to hear. So she wields that power, and she's in jail because she is being charged with offensive communication and disturbing the peace of the president. So we need to hear, how would the peace of the president be disturbed? It has to be a person challenging power in a very unconventional manner.
You mentioned radical rudeness as being her tactic there. Shefa here on Twitter says that her tactics aren't really the issue here. The issue is African governments are cracking down on dissidents, and because culturally women aren't supposed to speak, their voices are criminalized brutally, which is picking up on the point you were making there. But we also got a video comment, Rosabelle, from someone who says why she is so important. This is Shari out of Accra, and here's what she told the stream.
What does Dr. Stella Nyanzi's activism mean to me? It means bravery in the face of oppression. It means speaking out, and in particular as a Black African woman, daring to speak out at the risk of losing your job, at the risk of being humiliated, and at the risk of even injustice in the courts, still resisting and speaking your truth. And also inspiring the youth who compose 77% of Uganda's population. 77% of them are under 30, and her resistance, her strength is really inspiring, not only for Ugandans but also for Africans across the continent and the diaspora. And I hope this pushes for more solidarity and support for us all to improve our societies.
Rosabelle, talk to us about the impact that you see Stella having.
I think the impact Stella has is she's not just a conventional protester challenging power. She has the power of intersectionality. Last year, she organized a women's march to protest women being murdered in Uganda. She had already come here with a protest against President Museveni and his wife not living up to campaign promises of providing sanitary pads to adolescent girls who are dropping out of school. She's also known to support LGBT rights, which you rarely find very vocal, prominent advocates. So she comes very powerful. She offends so many different groups, but in a positive way. She brings that power to challenge and push the conversation to limits where people would not want to go. So definitely that is her power, and that resonates with an increasingly young population that they're talking about. We are 78% below the age of 35, and we have held elections which don't make sense, where the president, after 33 years, we can already know what as long as he's on the ballot in 2 years, he will still win again. So what are the other ways of organizing when you don't have also freedom to organize and protest? I think
so.
That
Rosabelle,
is Stella giving us that challenge.
She obviously has an incredible ability to get underneath the administration's skin in Uganda. We spoke to Ambassador Mo Katende. He is the Ugandan ambassador to the US. He gave us a very colourful statement. I won't read all of it out to you, but here is some of it. He's obviously not a fan of Stella. He talks about the misuse of the internet generally, and many persons all over the world are today gravely abusing its availability. Some of the content on Dr. Nyanzi's social media platforms is despicable, disgusting, and not congruous with her status of a mother, academic, and a PhD holder. So he is very unhappy. But what may happen to Stella in just a sentence? What do you think might happen to her, Rosabelle?
First of all, these charges are really cannot hold in court. We've already seen in the first hearing that the government has no idea how to actually challenge this kind of speech online.
So you think she will go free, Rosabelle? That is your thought
yes,
there. Thank you so much
she has to keep
for
fighting.
telling us about Stella Nyanzi. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Malika and I will see you online next time. Take care, everybody.